So I am here chatting with Eileen Richardson, and you are in Colorado, correct?
Yes, Denver.
Denver, Colorado. All right, and we're going to talk about ex-situ, which you can kind of see behind me, which is included in the Salina Biennial. Eileen, if you could just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and kind of more about your practice in general.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a real honor to be included in the Biennial. I am from Denver originally, born and raised, and then I went away to study film, got a BFA in Boston from Emerson College. So kind of had that art background, and took a really winding path since that to culinary school. I lived on like sustainable ranches in the rainforest in Costa Rica. You know, I've done a lot of different things. I'm really into fermentation. I worked at a kombucha brewery and like started this whole fermentation kitchen. So it's been a winding path kind of back to like more of a formal art training. I studied at the Denver Botanic Gardens, the School of Botanical Art and Illustration, which is like one of the most amazing drawing programs. It really taught me everything I know how to draw and paint, with great teachers, and it's just a lovely place to go to school. So I did that, and that was kind of like an entry point into more of a three-dimensional art practice and more of a serious contemporary art discipline that I've been working for the last like five plus years, more diligently. And yeah, like a lot of my, I had originally taken a flower, it was about an herbarium study class, and that got me into pressing flowers because a flower press was included in our kits there, and I kind of took it in a totally different direction, and now I use pressed flowers as one of the main components of my sculptural works. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's all those kind of like parts of your background. I can see how they all kind of come together in what you're doing right now. So it's exciting to see that. So the piece that we have in the exhibition is ex situ, which is comprised of Reishi mushrooms. If you wanted to just kind of quickly tell us a little bit more about that piece, and then I have a couple of questions about it.
Absolutely. So I'm really into mycology and just seeing mushrooms and everything about them. I actually drink reishi in my coffee in the mornings. It's one of the most studied medicinal Chinese traditional medicine mushrooms. I fall short of calling it a panacea, but it really is a great mushroom. It's amazing to consume. And I learned that it can be manipulated if you deprive it from oxygen in a bag. It grows in a way that's like really like fingers, and it grows phototropically, right? So I manipulated how these mushrooms grew by placing a light in varying sources. So over the course, and what is behind Gretchen there is it's about 6 months of growth, I think 5 or 6 months. So it's a long-term practice. It's nothing you can just pull together, you know, for it. I have to really plan these out. And they're very slow growing mushrooms traditionally, but this kind of even slows them down more. So depriving them from oxygen kind of creates this finger-like growth where normally they would like grow out more in like the like florets, like more wide in the forest. But it was really interesting to see, you know, just as you turn the light, how they would just kind of do a sharp turn. So really having fun manipulating that and seeing all of these kind of otherworldly patterns and shapes that have emerged from it. And the color retention is really beautiful too. I'm really into preserving things and in kind of working with these things that are neither dead nor alive, this kind of in-between state. Almost think of them as like ghosts in a way. And I put a bell jar over them, just to protect them really, but it also kind of formalized their look in a gallery sense. And the base that you see is actually the substrate that they grow in. So that's like a rice hull sawdust substrate, and then that's the mycelium that's bound them together. So as you know, I don't, this is a kind of a new thing for me. I don't know what the longevity of these kinds of sculptures are, but so far so good. They seem to be holding up really well.
Yeah, that was one of the things, like kind of my own personal curiosity in what I know about mushrooms. Like, would they, I mean, could you theoretically like get them growing again, or are they done?
You know what? That's a really good question. And I don't know. I think, okay, so it probably could happen because I had two on display in a gallery in Denver where I'm represented by, and they had one by a window, and it was in the summer, so it was fairly hot. And it actually started to grow a little bit again, but I hadn't dehydrated it completely. So
Oh,
it was a little bit like, I don't know if that was that or if it was just like, but you know what? I should try. That'd be pretty cool to bring them back.
yeah, bring them back. That would be. I love the shape of them. I love the forms that they create. And kind of listening to you talk about like the process. I know you said it was about a 6-month kind of process of shifting these lights. And one of the things that I was interested in was your use of time, because you talk about in your statement about how a lot of the work that you do is process based. And part of me was wondering, you mentioned you have this background in film, and if those things were probably related to each other. I don't know if you could talk a little bit more about time in your practice.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think as a filmmaker, I got really used to these kind of long-term projects or just kind of seeing things incrementally. So I shoot analog film. I'm 16 millimeter filmmaker. I'm kind of hardcore about, shooting on film itself, as long as I can. And that kind of gave me the context or just like patience to wait, this kind of like delayed gratification, which I think is really valuable, in a lot of ways in this culture of instant gratification that we're in.
Right.
So this kind of like magic moment and having a place for everything and having everything kind of like happen in its own due course. So that kind of gave me that work ethic, I guess. But a lot of what I do is seasonal based, so you can kind of see behind me like these willow sculptures that I have, like this one, and then this nest, that I built for the Denver Art Museum. I will really only, harvest things seasonally when it's appropriate and ethically, and a lot of, so yeah, so really in tune with like when things are ready to be harvested, and as well as the flowers too. Like I'll never go to the grocery store and buy a bouquet of flowers to press. That's just not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to, source what's in abundance, and really go with the seasons with that. So that's also, kind of time based, where I have to wait almost like a full year. If like someone wants to buy a willow piece, I have to delay it till next year, because it's just not possible. So, it kind of gives me an appreciation of the seasons and the transitions that we experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really, I don't know, I feel like we get that sense too, even looking at the mushrooms, kind of like knowing that this is not something that you have put together so much as you've kind of just guided it on this growth.
Right. And I feel like, yeah, that's something else I want to bring up is like, I almost want to remove myself in some ways as the artist, because I feel like I really am like a collaborator with these incredible like things that I find in nature, like I'm kind of just like a guiding hand in a way, which is an interesting role to play, when I really do rely on my materials so heavily. Yeah.
Well, I think it really fits in kind of in the gallery that it's in as well. So to give you a little bit of context, kind of where this object has been placed, where Ksenia has chosen to put this, it's in two galleries that are kind of linked together, but one of them focuses on the natural world and one of them focuses on the man-made world. But then the idea that there is a lot of blurred area between those two, like this, the natural world is always kind of encroaching on the man-made world, and vice versa, like we're always kind of encroaching on the natural world as well. So that's kind of where we see this piece in the exhibition. Sorry.
Oh no, it's okay.
Now I've lost my kind of like, but I thought it was a good your piece in particular is a good representation of this kind of bridging, I think, between the man-made world and the natural world, because of the reasons that you just talked about, like the way that you work with the materials, but also like fungus in particular is something that kind of creeps into our world.
Oh yeah,
and
it is
like
also
talk about like fermentation and how that's another this kind of cellular process that is kind of always kind of encroaching on us. I don't know if you could expand on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like thinking about like how to classify fungi, I mean, it's not, human or plant, like it's just like this really in between thing. And that's just so fascinating. And thinking about microbes, oh my gosh, it's just everything, like, I mean, from a culinary perspective is one thing, but thinking about how, I mean, we're composed like, it's like really like an organ in our body,
Yeah.
like just this like mutual dependency. And we, just be really beginning to understand the human microbiome and what that means. And then that just gets me thinking about like worlds that are like, so, just like the expansiveness of the universe, and then like, kind of shrunk down to like the world of microbes, and just like this ever expanding, like, I don't know. It's kind of like, it's hard to think about in a way. It like hurts your brain. But yes, absolutely. I just did a project that was kind of a community sourdough project where everyone added a little bit of sourdough flour to the sourdough starter. And I was kind of like collecting the microbes of the community, and then we baked bread from it and then shared it with the community. And it's kind of like a literal makeup, because when you make sourdough, you're exchanging microbes, and everything is always invisible, but you're kind of leaving behind a fingerprint, a unique fingerprint to this place. So this actually happened in this contemporary art center where I'm a resident, and we baked bread, and it was a really lovely thing. So food is also a really big part of my life and practice, and yeah, kind of ties it together.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
I love it. Can you talk a little bit about, I think in your statement, you talked about biophilia, you talked about some of these animal architecture, and some of these other ideas around things being built within the natural world. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, and it's so timely, I feel like even last year, people, or I don't know, just biophilia in general might not have been so commonplace as far as like what people knew about that or were even practicing that, because now with our like much slowed down pace of life, I see so much more interest in bird watching or gardening, and like I'm so this could be like a great silver lining of this virus that's happening. Really kind of has forced people to slow down, and literally I've been watching my plants grow, like it's like kind of crazy, like but that is really the root of my art practice, is our innate desire to connect with nature more. I mean, we are it, it's not something that's separate. And so oftentimes we're like, oh, like nature's out there, but we're here. It's like, no, we are very much part of this, and we need it, and we need to feel the mud between our toes, and what that does to a person. Like I even have a doctor friend that like prescribes like earthing to patients because it is so beneficial for your health, for your mental health, and everything. And I'm so uplifted to see more of that happening. But yeah, it's really why I make art, to kind of bridge that divide. And even in the city, you know, like I live in Denver, and even in like the most concrete, dense part of the city, you can still look up and see clouds, you know, and clouds are one of the most accessible, egalitarian kind of like access points for, you know, viewing nature, which is, I love that about them. So it doesn't really matter where you are, if you're, you know, not in a rural like oasis or, you know, a national park. You don't have to be. It's all around you. You just have to kind of learn how to train your eye to look a little bit closer. And I think slowing down, you know, and kind of removing some of these distractions has really aided in that for people right now.
So I think your answer to the last question kind of leads into this other question that I've been asking everybody, and that is really based in, you know, our current situation with like COVID-19 and kind of being stuck where we are. Is there anything in particular that you've been working on that is like related to the virus or our current time?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, like I've been talking about this a little bit with some artists, that I feel like there's a lot of pressure right now for artists to be like a guiding light or like some kind of like have some brilliant answer to this. And I don't know if I feel like I have that yet. Like we're still in the middle of this, and it's really hard to have a perspective on it. And and it's, you know, at first I was like, oh my gosh, like it's the gift of time. It's the thing that I have the least of, you know, like months of unstructured time. And then it's interesting that you know, I just like creatively like felt really flat for a while. And it was kind of like the opposite, like effect that I thought was going to have. But so, you know, I've been more like gathering things. Like I've been doing a lot of flower pressing, and I've been filming a lot inside my house. Like I've been filming time lapses of the way the light moves across my wall, and like just these really subtle things that are happening like in the home sphere. And I don't know what those projects are going to become yet, because I feel like there's just not as enough objective distance from this to really make a meaningful, I don't know, piece of art yet. But maybe someday. And been really interested in how isolation has been affecting people. You know, the long-term effects psychologically. I mean, even on children, like this could be really traumatic. And I work with kids a lot and teach art to youth, so that's been something I've been really curious about. Yeah, so that's been it's really been unexpected, and I've been turning a lot of my focus towards like homesteading and gardening and cooking and those more, I don't know, things that I have a little bit more control over. Also my material resources, you know, just it's really hard to go out to like Home Depot or like the plastic store where I normally go to. So I've been drawing a lot, just like what I have at home. And that's kind of been elevated in my art practice. So yeah, we'll see.
No, I mean, I agree that it's like, I feel like, I mean, we're so in it that it's hard to kind of tell like what is going to come out of it. But it's also, I think it's been interesting to kind of hear like from artists, like what they've kind of been turning to. And I also really love this idea of we're kind of forced to just look at what we have around us and use that. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, we'll see what happens, you know, over the next year as things kind of unfold. So the last question that I have that I've been asking everybody, this is the Mountain Plains Biennial, and we really focused on these central states in order to really showcase the contemporary art that is coming out of this region. And I was wondering if you had any kind of particular thoughts for you, like what it means to be a mountain plains artist. I mean, I feel like you've really specifically chosen, you know, the place that you live and work is a huge influence on your practice. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know, you know, I mean, I grew up here, you know, so Colorado is in my blood. My family's from here, and I feel like I got pretty spoiled maybe growing up here because it's phenomenal. And when I lived in Boston, there's a real sense of disconnection to nature in the way that I grew up knowing, kind of just like this vastness, this like expansive territory, like just the idea of the West. And you know, I'm really proud to be like a Western artist, and I think it's just as valid. I think a lot of people that live on the coast don't even think about like what's happening in the middle of the country, like at all. And yes, we are here, and we make great art, and I want to continue to advocate for this region, and really, yeah, and the artists that are working in it. It's kind of like a muse for me. Just, yeah, I don't think I'll ever leave it.
Yeah, I think there's something, I mean, every place I feel like has these particular things about them. Yeah, and I feel like you've been really able to kind of, you know, showcase what that is about, you know, the region that you're in, specifically using all those like very local, really focusing on that. I mean, that's all the questions that I had written down. Again, I love this piece because I think it really is, you know, beautiful to look at. But also kind of, like I said, it does really tie in all these ideas of nature, you know, human interaction with nature, nature's action, you know, interaction with humans and stuff like that. But I used to, like my husband and I actually used to grow oyster mushrooms and shiitake mushrooms.
Nice.
And the guy that we would get all of our spore from was like really into Reishi. He never grew any of them, but you know, every time my husband would talk to him, it would be all, it was his favorite.
Oh yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I mean, it's just